Hello! This is the third time I've tried to write this video. Also, I'm back where I used to record. As some of you may know if you watched the last video, I moved recently, but the place I'm at now doesn't really have the facilities to support this sort of hobby. There's not that much place to record, so here I am, back here to record a little bit. So 2-3 years ago, I started 2 series of critiques simultaneously. The idea was to be looking at 2 different game series, one that lost its quality over time, and another that discovered itself across its many titles. The 2 series were modern Resident Evil, starting from 4, and Pikmin. Let's see how far we got. Resident Evil 4, 5, and Pikmin 1. Whoopsie! Better late than later. I mean, you know what they say, the early bird gets the horns.
Resident Evil 6.
All in all, it's good that we've waited so long to finally talk about Resident Evil 6. See, back then the way I tackled videos was a little different. I was adamant on calling them look-backs rather than reviews, just as I am now when it comes to calling things critiques or video essays. That's the new hot term on the block. These days I try to pick like the one most important thing I have to say about a game, and then I structure the entire presentation around that. There's no reason to do a full feature coverage, it's kind of a waste of time. So, as you could guess, there's one really important thing I want to get across to you about Resident Evil 6, but it's not the sort of thing I can just tell you. We've got to get there first. As was the original intent behind the series, we'll start by looking back at the old games to see where Resident Evil 6 came from. So, Resident Evil 4, one of my favorite games of all time. In the video on it, the thesis boiled down to the game having excellent pacing. It's like if you walked into a restaurant and the waiter was like, "Hello and welcome to Resident Evil 4. For your first course, we have a combat scenario where one weapon or strategy is the best. And next we'll serve you another combat scenario where a different weapon and or strategy may be the most appropriate. And after that, we'll serve another combat scenario where another weapon or strategy is going to be most useful." Unlike other games of the same genre, cough cough The Last of Us, which have you doing a lot of the same sorts of scenarios in succession, Resident Evil says, "No way, Jose." In the video, I traced out a few scenes that showed this very well. One moment, you're in a confined space. The next, you have much more distance between you and the enemies. The next, it's confined again, but the enemies are invisible or something. From one room to the next, the game almost always had some combination of familiar elements to show you that you hadn't seen in that combination before. And in all other cases, it was introducing new features to you. Case in point, the enemy type El Gigante. If you haven't played the game in a while, you may have forgotten that you actually fight this boss 3 times. And each encounter has the game's variables tweaked in such a way that they all manage to feel unique. The first time, you fight him alone in a large open space, unless you save the dog at the beginning of the game, in which case you'll have a slight advantage. The second time, you fight him in a narrow pathway, making it very difficult to get past him without you or Ashley being hit, because in addition to the change of environment, you also have another character to look after now. This also takes place immediately after a large fight with a ton of enemies, so odds are your ammo stock isn't so great. The third and final time you fight El Gigante, you fight 2 of them at once in a much smaller room, but you do have a zipline you can use to get around, and you can trick one of them into falling into a lava pit with it. Each and every time, the enemy itself is the exact same, the same behavior, the same everything, but the environments change, whether or not you have a partner changes, the point at which the boss fight appears in a sequence of other events surrounding it changes. It's the same dude 3 times, but with minor changes that feed the encounters to you at a good pace. Resident Evil 4 is all about pacing. No 2 sections of the game are identical. No 2 sections could be switched places and have the game flow as nicely. Every room has been designed to serve a purpose at the immediate moment that the player enters it from the previous room. Try to think of 2 sections in the game that could be swapped, that are completely identical. Go for it. Think of any 2 bosses that you think challenge the player in the exact same way and could be easily exchanged. You can't, because there aren't any. Resident Evil 4 is all about pacing. So, did Resident Evil 6 inherit good pacing from its predecessor? No, but neither did Resident Evil 5, and we already discussed why in that video. Resident Evil 5 committed a significant amount of its focus on one addition, the co-op partner system. I won't bore you with the details, but basically, the now fully multiplayer campaign was incompatible with some of the features of Resident Evil 4. It's as a direct consequence of the inclusion of online play of the story that trying to properly pace the game made no sense. Since the game couldn't have dedicated save areas throughout the level, it had to adopt a chapter system. Since players would always need the ability to play the game, it was made possible for the game's chapters to be swapped between and jumped around in any order. This is also why the idea of a weapon shop or merchant was removed. Well-experienced players can always go back to replay the first chapters of the game, with players on their first playthrough, introducing them to weapons and equipment they haven't seen yet. If there were a physical merchant like in the old game, what's the logic for which weapons he should sell? What does the other player do while their partner is shopping? They tried a little bit of the old pacing by offering most weapons to the player to collect for free throughout the game. This only worked in the case of a player doing their first playthrough without connecting to another player online and without repeating previously completed chapters though. But ultimately you can't blame them for not pacing it as well. Why bother trying to repurpose situations or build interesting sequences if the players have the option to break them? So instead of pacing, Resident Evil 5 tried its best to offer variety. Just in case you're interested, by the way, pacing is kind of reliant on depth, whereas variety comes from the breadth side of things. In Resident Evil 4, you had multiple different kinds of the same situations, but in Resident Evil 5, you have a bunch of different situations. You've got the level that's in the dark, and you've got the level that's a turret thing, and you've got the treasure hunting level where you have a boat, and you've got one level that's just a whole puzzle. Most situations are completely unique, but not because they offer different combinations of familiar features and mechanics like Resident Evil 4, but because they mostly introduce new gameplay elements that never get reused or come up in any way as you progress. There's only one level with the boat. There's only one level with the light beam thing. There's only one level with the flashlight in the dark. It only happens once. Now, in the case of Resident Evil 6, it's a bit weird. There definitely are plenty of unique new features introduced in each chapter, but there's also an overabundance of the same sort of stuff. Every scenario in the game can kind of be tackled the same way. You can punch and kick and shoot enemies and then progress to punch and kick and shoot some more enemies. Sometimes, yeah, there's a train passing by that you have to look out for, or enemies that parachute in from the sky, but that doesn't really change how you'll be behaving as you play. Even bosses are very repetitive, with long drawn-out phases and poor feedback. You just kind of shoot them a lot and watch brownish-red splooks splooch all over the screen until, like, they change shape or something. Now, as you may have observed, Resident Evil 6, much like the game one notch before it, features a partner system. If you've seen my Resident Evil 5 video, you likely remember that being a major talking point for me, and that I have a pretty good understanding of how it works. And hold on a second, look at this drawing. Ha! Now you do too! This is all you need to understand the partner in Resident Evil 5. Okay, let's move on. So how did the partner system work in Resident Evil 5? I'm glad you asked! Basically, the partner system causes the game to be playable in 3 different ways, 2 of which aren't the worst thing a human can experience in their life, and the other... The game features 2 main characters who complete the chapters as partners. So the game allows you to have your partner be controlled by a friend in split-screen play or via online connectivity. This works for strangers too, meaning you can kind of drop in and take control of another player's partner at any point. In the case that the player is not playing online and doesn't have an extra controller and or a friend, the game provides an extremely rudimentary state machine to control the other character. The problem was that playing with this really poorly behaving partner was the one experience that would be common to all players of the game. Everyone at some point played with it and felt the same frustration as a result. You see, though the game dropped its pacing, it was still a survival horror game. And what that boiled down to back in 2009 was that resources like ammo and health were really scarce. Now this partner, yeah, it was simple, but does that immediately disqualify it from being good? No, of course not. You could definitely imagine a situation where a bot like this would be useful. For example, a typical first-person shooter game. Having a partner that you could command to move forward or stay back as well as heal you when you're hitting hard times, that would be great. One of the situations you could imagine it not being so great in, though, would be a survival horror game. And therein lies the issue. The 2 most critical resources that require the most attention in managing, health and ammo, were expended by the partner like there was no tomorrow. The partner also seemed to behave the same regardless of their current weapon equip, targeting a single enemy at a time and never using ammo-preserving melee attacks. It would also frequently waste health items that, if held for a longer time, could potentially be improved. For these reasons, many people treated their partner as a sort of mule, giving them non-consumable items or not giving them any weapons, basically just using them as an extension of their own inventory. Now, going through the campaign with your partner meant playing a version of Resident Evil 5 that was dominated by their behavior, not yours. For example, it makes more sense for the human player to use the machine guns in the game, as they can fully utilize their ability to stun and melee attack enemies, saving ammo, something that the bots can't do. Instead, just hitting that full auto and emptying the ammo reserve in seconds. This means, though, that the player needs to sacrifice one of their other guns to the partner, most likely the shotgun in the early game. But you know what's fun? Playing a zombie game with a shotgun. Why do I, a human player who paid human money for a console and a game, have to make concessions for a robot that's supposed to support me and improve the experience for me? I am still salty over not completing my first playthrough of Resident Evil 5 with a shotgun. Can you tell? The crappy partner was a major point of issue many had with Resident Evil 5 and taints the legacy of the game to this day. You can't really talk about the fifth main Resident Evil game without bringing up the bot-controlled partner. Furthermore, as more people are introduced to the game via remasters and re-releases, the now smaller than initial player base and winding down of online support means that someday, possibly soon, playing solo with the bot will be the only way anyone can experience Resident Evil 5. So going into the next project, they knew that nobody liked the partner, and it stands to reason that they would try to address these issues in the follow-up game. What did they end up doing? Well, they sort of looked at the biggest issues with the bot in the game and applied a patch that would improve the player's experience. They made the bot less overbearing to the point that it's almost unbearing. Like, it's as minimally bearing as it can possibly be. This means that the player isn't forced to change their actions to suit a cold-hearted and stupid robot. They have full control over the game and their choice to play it the way they want to play it. How is this achieved? Well, a couple of points for you. The partner's health is infinite and concealed from the player. The partner's ammo is infinite and concealed from the player. The partner always has all of the same weapons as the player. The partner never gives items to or uses items on the player. The partner's behavior in combat is slightly more complex, but overall, undomineering. And that's it. That's why I'm comparing it to a patch. They took what was established in Resident Evil 5, and instead of reworking it or improving it, they kind of took a big band-aid and put it over all of the problems people had with it. Oh, people don't like having the partner wasting their limited health items or ammo? Well, okay, now the partner is just invincible and never needs to borrow ammo, and just magically has all of the same guns as the player, all the time. Done. And you know what? This is pretty decent. It's not an improvement, but just getting the partner out of the way makes a world of difference. It's great to be able to actually play the game alone. Of course, you still have the same local and online multiplayer options, but the fact that single player isn't necessarily a worse experience is great. Well, no, that's wrong. It's not that it's great, it's just this is how it should have been from the beginning. There are a few things that they removed unnecessarily, though. In the last game, the player could command their partner to go around the area and pick up items for them. In this game, that never happens. So while you walk around collecting goodies, the partner continues fighting, and it's a bit of a bummer. But again, that's probably because the partner doesn't need any items themselves. They have unlimited resources, and it'd be kind of stupid to have them pick things up and for it to automatically teleport to your pocket, I guess. So, maybe I'm nitpicking. But at the same time, there are partner elements that were just barely explored in the previous game that this one expands upon. When you think of successful multiplayer co-op, you probably think of asymmetry. But Resident Evil 5 had, I believe, 4 moments where the partners get split up during fights. And none of those lasted very long either. Resident Evil 6, on the other hand, is constantly throwing these curveballs at you, forcing the different players into different roles depending on the character they control. When you're with a friend, these sorts of moments are especially interesting. Often, one player will be covering the other while they complete some sort of objective on the ground, or one will drive a vehicle while the other one shoots. Unlike the last game, which featured moments like this where you're in a car shooting, but both characters are shooting and some other dude is driving. Sometimes players will just be separated by physical barriers, often for puzzles. They were probably only able to add these sorts of situations into the game as a result of the context-sensitive behavior of the AI partners, allowing them to act normally enough during these sections. I mean, the partner can now actually assist in puzzle solving. Well, if you can call this assisting. But hey, it's better than the last game where the partner just kind of stands on this pedestal and waits for you to solve the puzzles for them, not even freaking coming down when enemies start attacking. I can't stress enough how many moments there are like this in the game, where both players are doing different things. It's a really big improvement, and it makes the game's partner system feel much more warranted. Still though, this is kind of how it should have been from the beginning. So pacing is gone, and the partner system is technically functional now, but not in the way it should have been. They were only able to make the patches they did because of the leaks that existed and were found by players in the last game. Because of that, I don't really feel comfortable just saying, yeah, here's a check on this random checklist, so here's a dash instead. Assign whatever meaning you want to it. Finally, let's get into probably the most important and apparent change that Resident Evil 6 introduced to the series, the somewhat overabundance of action. You see, the term survival horror was coined by the first Resident Evil, kind of making the ever-growing series responsible for the meaning of the genre. Your boy CJ from What's With Games made a great video recently on horror games and broke down 3 scare tactics: anticipation, jump scare, and emergency. Back in the day, those first 2 were super easy to do, but emergency was kind of hard to instill in players without proper resources. So that's kind of what Resident Evil 4 added to the genre for the first time by bringing over more action game-like mechanics. It managed to balance everything though. It spooked you, it made you feel powerful, but it also made you struggle. It was great. Resident Evil 5's first acts kept in line with the idea of survival horror, only falling off later on. But those early chapters are still worth some credit. Resident Evil 6, though, it kind of takes the survival and the horror from survival horror and, well, shocks them. Make no mistake, this is a Resident Evil game, but it's not survival horror. It's action. The game is full of over-the-top set pieces and combat sections and explosions and quick-time events. I mean, the most fire you saw in Resident Evil 4 was in a single section towards the end where a helicopter pilot supports you briefly before exploding. And in this game, you go from tumbling around off a cliff in a bus to getting your plane hijacked by the man of a million nipples over here, and then crash landing it into China, and then getting out of the plane that was just hijacked by, need I remind you, a man with a million nipples, and getting out of this thing and meeting 2 other people and just getting into a boss fight just like it's nothing. The wacky situations this game puts you in are insane. It's nothing like the old Resident Evil games. It's such a weird shift in tone. It's almost funny how seriously it takes itself even after all of this. I mean, on a smaller scale, one of the most controversial additions to the game was free melee attacks. Punches and kicks and finishers and grapples and all that. See, the older games had these sorts of things, but to execute them you needed to first stun an enemy, which you could only do at the expense of a bullet or flash grenade. These moves were great for crowd control and served as a way to preserve ammo. Why shoot a guy 3 times for a kill when you can shoot him once, then punch him, and possibly knock back a bunch of other people around him? In this game though, they decided to make it possible for players to pull these attacks off whenever, at the expense now only of a stamina slot, which regenerated naturally and quickly enough. Funnily enough, the stamina slots weren't used for any other moves, so you could do your rolls and your slides and your sprints as much as you wanted unless your stamina was empty. It was weird, but anyways, including these sorts of super powerful attacks showed from the get-go a greater focus on action in even the simplest of combat encounters. In previous Resident Evil games, a single enemy placed in the right situation could be a serious problem. In this game, small groups of enemies can easily be taken out with a combination of pure melee attacks from you and your partner. No need to waste a single bullet. This alone was enough to greatly disturb the balance of the game's other systems, most notably ammo. In the other games, you were meant to always feel like you were low on ammo. In this game, 30 minutes into the Leon campaign, and I have 48 handgun rounds in reserve. In the old game, a single handgun mag was 50 and was about the max you could expect to be carrying at any given time. In the first 30 minutes of Resident Evil 4, you'd be lucky if you had 10 extra rounds on you. By the 3rd chapter of this game, I was literally full of ammo. I was needing to manage my inventory every time I wanted to pick up a new item. The game throws away a lot of the classic features of its series in the name of action-adventure. I mean, so in the old games, all of the weapons were available for free in the game, right? But they were well hidden so that they acted as a reward. If you missed them, the consequence is that you'd have to spend currency to buy them instead. In my first playthrough of Resident Evil 4, for instance, I missed the first shotgun in the house. I never even knew it was there until many playthroughs later. In this game though, new weapons are indicated on your map. Why? Because wouldn't it be lame to miss a gun? Yeah, so here it is. There's also the fact that you can now move while aiming, among other functional and some kind of purely decorative additions to mobility. Giving the player more movement options makes both evasive and offensive actions much easier to execute with minimal planning and preparation. You can now sprint to run away, but also to unleash a powerful charging attack. Even some of the modern additions from the last games, like weapon upgrades, were removed in favor of something more action and multiplayer friendly. Enhancements, kind of like perks or loadouts that you can pick before starting a game. The familiar skeuomorphic illusion of an actual laser pointer being emitted from your gun is present, albeit more realistically, but is now also surrounded by your typical video gamey crosshairs. And speaking of aiming, you can, for no apparent reason, dual-wield handguns now too. Like, it slightly raises your rate of fire and decreases the accuracy, but that barely justifies its inclusion as a feature. Anyways, talking about killing off that excellent pacing in the old games, I'm not kidding when I say to you that the last quarter of the Leon campaign is straight up one boss fight against this dude who you know, imagine a boss who they are so confident in that they're able to make him the last quarter of your campaign. Imagine, what do you think this guy's job title is? If you guessed National Security Advisor, you're a cheater. First, you start off on this train, and it is total insanity. He's turned himself into like this dog or something, and he's running at you, and you're ducking in and out to pop shots at him, and he's also got some sort of machine guns mounted on this dog face praying mantis sort of extendable neck thing. Then after, you know, crashing the train off a bridge into the water, it quiets down. You know, you do some spooky zombie stuff, and then he turns into a giant T-Rex. He's straight up a freaking dinosaur. He's not a super zombie mutant he's a dinosaur. A straight up Jurassic Park motherfucker. And this dude in the Jeep pulls up, and you gotta shoot him for a bit until you can't anymore, and then the guy dies, and then every so often the dude will like vacuum pack all of his stuff like it's a bunch of prosciutto, all of his guts go in, it turns into like a normal dude. He's topless though. So you go up to him, you give him a good couple of whacks, you punch him, you give him a bump, and then he explodes back into a dinosaur, and you go shoot him again. Then there's this ridiculous scene where you're in an elevator, right, and the thing breaks, and now you're holding on to like the elevator cable, right? It's this giant cable, and you're holding on to it, hanging over this void, right? Like this freaking building in this city. Mind you, that I have to remind you again, you just crashed a passenger plane into this building. You're climbing this thing, and the dude turns back from the T-Rex into the dog. He's climbing up the building now, and he's chasing you, okay? And the two of you are climbing, and this dude is coming, and then you jump off, and there's like a little bridge, and then Ada shows up, and now he's the dog again, and you're so high up in the sky, you can't even see the ground, and you're fighting this dude, and he's doing the thing where he vacuum packs himself again, and you're fighting, and now you're with Ada, and suddenly Ada and Leon love each other or something, and this dude still has his face bullets that he's shooting at you, and at one point, like, Ada's about to die, she passes out, Leon gets on top of her, he's like, Ada, I will protect you, I am Leon, and he takes like a million pieces of shrapnel to his back, he's just like, but he's like, and then he just gets up, because the power of love, and then you're still punching this dude, you just took like a million bullets, and you're just punching this dude in the face, and then you gotta go climb the building now, right, you gotta get to the top, and the guy, let's guess again, he went from a dog praying mantis creature to a dinosaur back to the dog. What's he gonna turn into? How can you get further than a dinosaur? What does he turn into? He turns into a giant fly. This is the National Security Advisor, is an enormous fly, and you're getting tossed around like a rag doll, and there's zombies all over the place, and he's like absorbing them for energy, like he can eat them. It's basically like the Ouroboros fight from Resident Evil 5, except he's also a fly, and you're having a little fight, you're shooting your bullets, you're having a good time, right? And there's like this thing, there's like some sort of giant metal rod, and it's attracting lightning, because of course you're also doing this in a thunderstorm, right? And you see it, and then at one point it breaks off, and what you gotta do now is you gotta shoot the guy, and then when he falls, you gotta take the giant metal rod and stab him between his little fly eyeballs, the little like, enormous fly eyeballs. You stab him in the face, and then the lightning gets attracted by the metal rod, and he gets zapped by the lightning. You gotta do that a couple of times. You're okay. All right, let me just say this again so that we all understand each other. Okay, you're fighting the National Security Advisor, who is a giant fly, formerly a dinosaur. And you're fighting this dude with a metal rod to lightning strike him in the face. And then you do that, right? You have your whatever, you get in the helicopter, you got a rocket launcher, the guy gets back up, you pop him with the rocket launcher, boom, explodorino, turns into the dude again, falls off this enormously tall building. As he's falling, he lands back where you were fighting before. He falls on this spike, he gets freaking impaled, falls down, his blood is flowing, and it flows onto the ground into the shape of, you guessed it, the umbrella logo. Boom! Hype music starts playing, the credits bump, bump, bump. That's Resident Evil 6. If it weren't for the fact that I was showing the footage of what I was talking about right there, if it weren't for that, you would not have believed. If you've never played this game before and you played the last two, and I said this is how Resident Evil 6 ends, at least one of its campaigns, you would not freaking believe me. You'd be like, shut up. Like, it is the last thing. Like, I cannot imagine anything more insane. Like, I cannot amp this up any higher than it already is. It's so not Resident Evil. This is over-the-top crazy action. This isn't what the last two games, especially the fourth one, were about. This is what just about all discussion of this game sounds like. I even participated in it myself at one point. What you hear a lot of is Resident Evil 6 is not a Resident Evil game. And I'm not questioning the validity of this. I agree. I think this is a fact. What I'm asking is whether or not this idea merits any attention whatsoever. Basically, if we all agree that the Resident Evil 6 is not a Resident Evil game, why are we judging it like one? Why are we comparing it to games that we're saying it has nothing to do with? Why don't we instead just, like, you know, judge it for what it is rather than what it isn't? Maybe compare it to games it actually is like. So scrap this. It means nothing. Let's start from the beginning. What kind of game is Resident Evil 6? Okay, so, like, you know when you were a kid and you go to the movie theater and they had, like, an arcade meant to mop up your loose change while your parents waited in line for you? I remember at my theater there was this game called Ocean Hunter. You'd like shoot at these spooky sharks and fish and stuff, and my brother and I would try our hands at it every time we went to a movie. If I had to guess though, you're probably thinking of something more like House of the Dead or Time Crisis. The sorts of games that are best enjoyed with a friend and break down into total goofy chaos unless you're both intimately familiar with the game. It's just full of over-exaggerated stuff popping out at you, every scenario trying to top the last, this rush of mad gunfire and screaming at your partner, screaming at the crap on screen, just yelling, freaking out, having a great time. That's what Resident Evil 6 basically is. It's that idea of some crazy cooperative adventure, but with full control and a whole lot more content and depth. Just like those arcade machines, it's not meant to be taken so seriously. You're just supposed to have fun with it. And when you play it that way, holy crap, is it a good time. Oh my god, there's a raptor, but dude, we're so dead, Donkey Kong's here! Dude!
Yes!
No! Okay, now if we turn to the side, Donkey... Oh, he's dead. Okay, good. I feel like it's about time to mention that in preparation for this video, my friend CoolPants and I completed a playthrough of the Chris and Piers campaign together over the course of like 2 days or something. Some of you may have even been in attendance at the live stream I hosted of it. And if you weren't, CoolPants made a highlight reel of the stream's best moments. Link in the Dunkaroo. Honestly, like, what you'll gain from watching that video will probably do the point I'm about to try to explain with words more justice. So, while wrapping things up, CoolPants felt like he didn't enjoy the game. What he did agree was that he enjoyed the time spent playing it. The time wasn't wasted. The game was a conduit for us to have a blast. Yeah, some moments dragged on, but some gave us an opportunity to laugh and get to know each other. I feel like the difference between he and I had to do with our expectations. I was expecting exactly what I got because I was already familiar with the game and what it offered. I think he was hoping for a more traditional Resident Evil experience. And I can't blame him. I felt the same way the first time I played it. In fact, I made a couple of rant videos on my second channel at the time of playing it, which are now private. Don't ask me for them, they're bad, but I was so frustrated with the game for not being like Resident Evil, for not being what I thought it was. But after playing a few more times in multiplayer and getting to know what the game was like, I was able to have a good time with it all these years later, because I knew what I was getting into. I should have prefaced this, by the way, by saying that I wasn't actually expecting to have as much of a good time as I did. In my Resident Evil 5 videos end screen, posted all those years ago, I made a request to anyone willing to play the game online with me for the video, and you can tell how much I was dreading it. I was mostly remembering how long the game was, and yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a video making perspective, the length of the game is awful, but that's not a typical use case, so it doesn't matter. But it's worth mentioning, the game is long, and aside from a few moments of just pure padding, I'm talking about U-hanger sequence, it's pretty dense. Again, for the sake of full disclosure, specifically for video capture in this video, I only played through the Leon and Chris campaigns. But be aware that prior to this, as a younger boyo, when the game first came out, I made it a point to complete 3 playthroughs of each main campaign. 1 solo, 1 in split-screen co-op, and 1 with strangers online. I also did 2 playthroughs, solo and split screen, of the spoiler alert secret Ada campaign you used to unlock at the end. The thing apparently is unlocked immediately now in the newer versions of the game though, so be warned, don't play it until you've played all the others, if you care about the story. End of this sidetrack, but if you want my advice about how I think the best way to play the game is, I think that the Leon campaign is best played alone, or if you want with strangers online, if you can still find any, and the Chris and Jake campaigns are, I think, both best played with someone that you personally know, either in split screen or in online play with them. The Ada campaign is a little bit funky, and I highly recommend that you play it with a friend. I think you can only do it in split screen. I don't think you can do it online. If you have a friend, play it in split screen. I don't want to tell you why though, because the Ada campaign is meant to be played alone. There's only 1 character, but it is playable in 2-player. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's absolutely worth it just for the laughs, because it's kind of ridiculous what they do to make it work. It's really, really good. Anyways, please enjoy that. So, pacing. Guess why it's not there? Because it doesn't need to be. Those arcade shoot-em-ups were all about ridiculous mission after ridiculous mission, and that's what this game does. It makes it much more fun for online play. I mean, even though you could drop in any time into anyone's ongoing game online in Resident Evil 5, there were some chapters that if you got popped into, you'd be pretty disappointed. You have no ideas how many times I'd randomly connect to a dude doing the boring El Gigante turret boss fight on hard mode that takes like 10-20 minutes of just shooting with your machine gun, and half the time it's people who just are trying to get like a trophy or something, and they couldn't do it on their own, and they're looking for someone who's played it before to just help them. And it's like, oh, come on, not this again. Same thing with the boat chapter. You'd often get people who just didn't like shooting, so they would like have someone online and they would get into the boat first so that they could drive, and then they would wait for you to get in to shoot, and it was like, really? This game though, by eliminating those sorts of moments, the ones I was talking about, like how the game introduces a new thing for 1 chapter and then ends it, by not doing crap like that, by keeping most chapters very similar, anyone you connect to for a game will be doing something interesting to you. Now, things like most of the combat encounters being very similar make sense. It's not that the game is bad for not being like Resident Evil 4, it matches its new genre, action shooter. It meets the requirements of this instead. Suddenly things like a multi-phase boss battle taking hours also make more sense. Each phase is like a level. You can pop in for a few of them and then drop out, join someone else doing something else later. The game doesn't need to pace things for you. You can play the game at your own pace and your own leisure. Why? Because it's not a survival horror game. It's an action game. Why can you now sprint and roll and slide and punch and kick? Think about it. The game isn't crafting an experience for you room after room anymore. It's not forcing you to try different strategies in every sequence. It's not reusing or reformulating challenges. So instead, it relies on you experimenting yourself. And to do that, it needs to provide you with a broad set of interconnected and deep actions. Imagine if Resident Evil was the same sort of room every time. If you fought El Gigante 3 times, but each time was the same as the first. Add on top of that limited control options, and I'll be the first to say that it'd be a pretty junk game. Give the player, though, the ability to run, to punch, to do finishers, to do these stupid freaking rolls, to dual wield at the press of a button. Well, now it becomes less crap because the game's challenge now becomes to use most effectively this greater ability set. It's not just running and aiming, it's so much more, and true mastery requires knowing the best time for everything and how to best work as a team. I mean, you want rock-hard proof that this game fully commits to the action genre? You open up the menu, right? And the game gives you options and settings for all sorts of things, allowing you to tailor the game's systems to your needs. You can decide whether or not you want the camera to shake, what kind of reticle you want, how the camera should orient itself when you're sprinting, your various aiming speeds, just all sorts of things you don't necessarily expect because you never had the option in the last games because they were designed with a very specific experience in mind and they gave you exact controls that you needed. There was no need to be considerate of player preference due to the genre, but now, because we are in a different genre, there is. This is an action game. The sorts of situations they're going to throw at you, every player will want to control their character a little bit differently for. These options now need to be available. And this might sound dumb, but you know what's really impressive? Is that all of these settings are fully customizable live in-game. Even graphical things like brightness. I mean, yeah, whatever. But back in 2012, you typically need to exit a game to change settings like this. At any point, you could just decide, you know what, I'm not feeling this laser pointer right now, and change it on the fly. And you know what's even crazier? Every character has some sort of phone or device thing that is a physical representation of your GUI, and everyone has a different one. So the menu navigation and inventory management look different depending on the character you're playing as. This is an insane amount of polish, and don't take that point too lightly. This was originally the thesis of my first attempt at writing this script, that Resident Evil 6 is one of the most polished games ever. Every part of this game just goes above and beyond what you'd expect, from the visuals, which are breathtaking for the PlayStation 3. I mean, darkness! They got darkness right. I kept playing with the brightness on the game and my TV. I thought something was wrong for me to be seeing so much blackness, but that's just how it is. It's fantastic. When you're out in the night with that short visibility, relying on lightning to give you brief snapshots of your surroundings. Holy hot popsicles, dude, is it slick. But from stuff like that to little things like the menus and UIs. I mean, what is this menu? What is this screen? I have no idea what it is. I think it's like some sort of page where you can go to read documents and files that you find throughout the game, but this whole menu is rendered. It's a room with these display cases for each campaign, these cool dioramas depicting scenes from those chapters. It's absolutely not necessary to have a physical thing for this menu. It could have just been a drop-down. It could have just been a list of files that you open. It didn't have to be a display case with a bunch of stuff. 90% of players won't ever see this. And in most games, that would mean that there wouldn't be much to see. Why spend effort, aka time and money, on things that barely anyone cares about? But no matter what you do or where you explore in this game, you'll rarely find any sharp edges. Yeah, okay, sometimes characters speak without their mouths moving, but look at this campaign select screen! Look, there's a different animation on the wall with the shadows for each character based off the things you'll see in their missions, kind of like the dioramas that we saw before. This isn't just a nice touch. This is weeks, maybe even months of work on the things you're seeing right now, which most people would barely spend a second glance on, let alone a first. And here's what I wanted to say about this in that original script. The gaming scene today is very, very weird. Games get released not just without a nice coat of paint, but oftentimes full of bugs and issues, sometimes even actually incomplete. Metal Gear Solid 5 is an incomplete game. I spent over 150 Canadian dollars on the collector's edition of a thing that wasn't finished. Straight up, the metal CD case thing that had the collector's DVD thing inside it had space for 2 discs. Were there supposed to be 2 discs? Actually, no. At first, I thought I was missing something until I Googled and I realized that there's only supposed to be one disc in there. So why did they package it like that? Well, my guess is that they just had a bunch of these cases lying around and used them to save money in packaging for the collector's edition of an incomplete thing that I paid extra human dollars for. So to be looking at stuff like this and then to travel back in time just 5 years and see a quote-unquote unsuccessful game push so much content for free is just, well, it's kind of disappointing coming from where we are. I mean, you still had to pay, but what you were paying for was finished. It was massive and shiny all over, not just in the most important places. I mean, I mentioned that the game featured 4 fully realized campaigns split up into 5 chapters each. So in total, there are 20 of what essentially are really long levels. Each one typically takes minimally an hour. Good example, CoolPants and I spent a weekend doing Chris's campaign. That's 4 weekends of constant arcade-style action. But only if that's what you want, because each of these chapters can be played 3 different ways and can be replayed multiple times with new items and loadouts and skills and even partners and difficulty. And that's not even mentioning the pure multiplayer mode, the Mercenaries, an actual arcade-style mode where you have to build up combos of enemy kills either alone or with a partner before an extendable timer runs out. This is a staple of the series now, but this game probably has the best version of Mercs Resident Evil has ever had. And that includes the whole dedicated Mercs game. Each player's equipment and your loadouts make sense, and if you're gonna play online, you really need to be able to operate as a team player. The additional controls and maneuverability make it much more fun though. It's far less predictable and cheesable than the other Mercenaries games. It's a shame that nobody really gave the game the recognition it deserved. If something like this came out today, people would flip. I mean, it's as polished as those old arcade shooters, but all the way through. From the opening to the final rushes, it's a gorgeous and fully realized game. I mean, on top of just the raw gaming content that the game provides, even the plot made sense. It was well structured around the 4 perspectives. For those of you who don't know, the game's 4 campaigns are intertwined. Characters will often bump into each other and complete scenarios together. When playing offline, the game runs all cooperative characters as AIs, which is really impressive. But when connected, there's a chance that the people you run into are 2 other players playing another campaign and who just so happen to be at the same part as you at the same time as you. This is an incredible feature. There's an entire critically acclaimed game based around this idea alone, and it's just one facet of Resident Evil 6, a much grander game. The game sometimes even does this without telling you. Like, okay, so in this part of the Leon campaign, you have to defend yourself from this robot security system before chasing after Ada and running into Chris and Piers along the way. When you later play the Chris campaign, you realize that Chris was going through the same sort of challenge in a room next to where Leon was the whole time. When playing as either character in either campaign, if you get a good peek through the glass, you can actually see 2 AI-controlled characters on the other side doing the same challenge as you in real time. I'd never noticed this until these playthroughs for this video. There are a ton of resources being spent here to have this moment work the way it's working, and ultimately, most people won't even learn of it to appreciate it. They might as well have not made the glass transparent and not actually put the characters on the other side, and most people wouldn't have felt any different about the game. I mean, a feature like this, it costs money, and in any development environment, every amount of effort needs to be justifiable somehow, otherwise it's a waste. If making this feature won't add any value to the product, then why waste time on it? Well, probably because the people behind this weren't looking at it purely as a product. Speaking of features that must have cost a bunch of money and nobody even knows were in the game, did you know that in the single-player mode, the partner can be given specific commands? Like, you can point out a specific enemy and set your partner to target them until they're dead. I also didn't know this until this video. I accidentally stumbled upon this information on Google. How does nobody talk about this? Or about how the partner will dynamically enter different states depending on the situation they're in order to better serve the player, but also not play the game for them, seeing as how now it has unlimited health and bullets. If you set the partner to attack, you don't want them to stay in attack mode. You want them to eventually go back to a cover mode because you don't want them to play the game for you. And why doesn't anyone talk about the special ways that the partners are used in the game's single player? Like, sometimes, depending on certain contexts, partners will perform scripted actions that are purely aesthetic. For instance, this section of the Leon campaign, Elena, the partner you get if you choose to play as Leon, will run off ahead of the player. This is because Elena and her sister were recently kidnapped and held in this location that you're checking out now, that you're exploring. And Elena is hoping that her sister, who's been missing, might still be here somewhere. The partner isn't just a gameplay system, it's also usable by people responsible for keeping the narrative going. In the old game, this sort of behavior in the partner would have needed to be presented in a cutscene.
She's not here either.
Who are we looking for?
But here, the game demonstrates a significant amount of effort spent for the sake of immersiveness through a state change that, again, most people won't even realize, even when they see it happen right before their eyes. It's so completely natural for a person in this context to behave this way. If I weren't being so attentive of the AI's behavior throughout my playthrough because of, what I discovered in the last game, I definitely would have missed this. This shows that while, multiplayer might be more fun, playing the game solo offers certain experiences that can't be had otherwise. I mean, if a buddy of mine were controlling Elena during this part, I wouldn't have seen this happen and would have missed out on a bit of character development. This game, there are just so many things that objectively don't add any value to it, but still exist and are executed flawlessly. There are so few studios with this perspective on game crafting anymore. So few people willing to actually waste their time making something impressive, regardless of whether or not it will sell the game. There's a great GDC talk by the lead developer of the Prompto Photography AI system from Final Fantasy XV, the definition of a nice-to-have feature. In any other game, it would have come out as minimally functional as possible, if it had come out at all. But for some reason, someone allowed a whole team of people to work on literally nothing but the AI photographer for the entire duration of development. Why? Because to them, the game wasn't just there to make money. People wanted to be proud of it, to make players feel a certain way. They didn't just have a goal of making their money back, they also wanted to make a piece of freaking art.
I believe photos are time machines. It can bring us back to the very moment the picture was taken, and it stirs our memory and make it recall the old day. And it tells us that that good old day will never, ever come again. And that strong punch, that strong emotion pulse is strong enough to make the player who are really into our game cry if we're lucky. And I think we're lucky.
I sincerely think that if Resident Evil 6 had been recognized as the action game it was, and not just discredited for being a bad Resident Evil game, if the game had been successful and garnered positive or appropriate or fair reception, games today would be much different. If the game gained more popularity, I feel like game makers all around would have realized that players want an abundance of content. They want options, they want different game modes and cooperative choices. If this game had succeeded, I think a lot more games would look like Final Fantasy XV, and a lot less like cheap excuses to get kids into gambling with loot boxes. In the same way Resident Evil 4's success was a turning point in third-person shooter games, I feel like the failure of Resident Evil 6 was also. Again, games are socio-technical systems. Imagine being a manager at a game company and hearing about people complaining that this game called Resident Evil 6 was too long. Imagine hearing about a team of people who spent a ridiculous amount of effort only for people to complain that they spent too much effort. Why then would you allow your teams to invest any more than the minimal amount of effort in your products? I mean, on top of that, you don't want your game to get panned, right? Maybe I'm extrapolating a little. Maybe it wouldn't have outright prevented us from seeing these changes in games today, but I think a successful Resident Evil 6 would have at least delayed the sorts of trends we're seeing happening now.
Because now in this day, when everything is finished, people come to me and say, well, Prompto Snapshot is great. They say to me, and I'm happy. But during the time of developing, many people just say that this feature doesn't worth it. It doesn't help a game to be fun or anything at all. And it's my job to try to convincing them every day, but it's difficult because Prompto Snapshot is not about making photos, it's about making photo experiences. And we can't share experiences unless we finish making it.
Now, one thing we haven't addressed is this. Sure, maybe we accept Resident Evil 6 is not like the other Resident Evil games, but seeing as how people were so upset, is there, like, a reason it's wrong to deviate when you're a title in a long-standing series? Look, people like to pull out that whole Resident Evil 6 is not a Resident Evil game as if it's synonymous for Resident Evil 6 is not a good game or Resident Evil 6 is a bad game. But is it? Why can't the game change genres just because it's in a series? I mean, isn't like that the whole draw to Final Fantasy? How every game takes place in a different world and the series jumps genres all the time? Also, isn't it kind of garbage of anyone to complain about Resident Evil 6 and expel it from recognition within its series for adding more action elements to what was established in Resident Evil 4 when like that's literally exactly what Resident Evil 4 did? That happened. Resident Evil 4 did this too, but everyone loved it. Why did it move away from preset camera angles and slow planar aiming? Because of the times. Why did Resident Evil 6 make similar changes? Because of the times. Here's a hot take for you. I love Resident Evil 4. If you don't know to what extent, I invite you to watch my Generation X video, or just sort my YouTube uploads by uploaded date ascending. And as much as I love the game, as much as it has shaped my freaking life, knowing the kid I was in 2012 and the types of games I was interested in then, I guarantee I would not have bought a Resident Evil 4 or a game exactly like it at that time. 2012? This was like a hot pocket time for games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Black Ops 2 came out a month after Resident Evil 6, for reference. Back then, if the back of a game's box didn't say online multiplayer, I wasn't interested. Multiplayer games were booming, so blame them or don't blame them for trying to adapt Resident Evil into the sort of game that people had an interest in, into the sort of game that people wanted to play, for trying to make a game that wouldn't not sell any copies. I choose not to blame them, because otherwise, I'd be a 100% pure garbage man. Listen, it's like say I came up to you and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go out real quick and I'm gonna buy you a new car. And then I left to return later with literally the best pizza on planet Earth. This is like a phenomenal pizza. I mean, sure, you didn't get what I told you I was going to deliver, but you still have the actual pizza all other pizzas strive to be. The best pizza ever. Now, here's the thing about this example, this story. You just have to remove one part to make it much easier to swallow. If instead of mentioning the car, I just said, hey, I'm gonna go get something, I'll be right back, and then brought you the pizza, you wouldn't be disappointed because you didn't know what you were going to get, but it turned out to be as good as it could have been, and that's good! And you know what's funny? You know what's really, really funny? Capcom never promised anyone a car. In fact, in the first minute of the game's reveal trailer, they start showing that whole hilariously unserious plane crash into China and proceed to show off the most action-focused and unsurvival horror-focused gameplay of all time. They didn't just not promise a car, they explicitly mentioned the pizza! Hello everyone, here is a pizza! This is the pepperoni, this is the cheese! If you want it, you can get it! If you don't want it, you don't have to get it! But here it is, it's a pizza, it's not a car! If you went into the game expecting a Resident Evil-like experience, you had nobody but yourself to blame. To expect something of it that the game's first public appearances made abundantly obvious it would not be is wrong and dumb. If you did this, like me as a kid, you are a doo-doo head. And if you blame them for it, then you are the aforementioned 100% pure garbage man. And I haven't played Resident Evil 7 yet. My sister got it for me though, shout out to her. But as we can see, the game did reinvent itself again, and people seem to be really pleased. Why did it do this? Well, look at the times! The rising popularity of first-person single-player horror games meant that adapting the series to the genre now would likely make it successful. The fact that the genre had been dominated by independent games made that anyone with a large corporate budget would likely stand out. So they started working on it. The public outlash after the reveal and cancellation of Konami's new Silent Hill game and PT, the free playable teaser for it, was validation for them. Validation that there was an interest in and a market for the new game they had been secretly working on. People wanted something like this so desperately, the game barely had to market itself. And can you blame them for swapping genres for not being like the last games again? No, because they tried to do it to suit players' wants and desires for the times. Someday in the future, when games are just oversaturated with these horror games where you're walking around with a flashlight and these independent games, you see more big companies making games like this, you're gonna see Resident Evil change again to better suit whatever is popular at that point. Resident Evil 4 was the best approach for its time. Resident Evil 6 for its. Resident Evil 7 for its. Love me or hate me for this, but I'm being completely honest when I say that I think Resident Evil 6 is almost as good at what it's trying to be as Resident Evil 4 was at what it was trying to be. And the only reason it's not as good or greater isn't because of any of its own unique features or ideas, but rather it's from trying to even bother to preserve some design elements from the old games. The relationship between Resident Evil 6 the game and Resident Evil the series is less like the game being a stain on the series and more like the series being a shackle on the game. Here's what I mean. In classic Resident Evil, inventory management was a crucial part of the game. You only had a limited amount of space, which meant you'd often run out of ammo. Sometimes you had to make difficult decisions about equipment brought into each chapter. In Resident Evil 5, you only have 9 slots. If you want to bring a handgun, you'll also need to have handgun ammo. You're already using 2 slots. If you want to take 3 weapons with you, you'll need 6 slots. That leaves you 3 left. And if you want to keep the body armor on, that's another 2 slots, so 1 left. If you hold health, good, but now you're full and you can't really swap anything out. This worked because the game was survival horror. The best way to play was to go in just light enough to be able to pick up new items you found, but just heavy enough as to be able to handle combat without running dry. You're always making tough decisions between prioritizing defense and offense depending on the items you picked up. When you find a grenade, do you drop a health item in order to pick it up? What do? Resident Evil 6 kind of mindlessly carries this sort of system over, even though it's not necessary in this genre. As I mentioned before, you almost always have enough ammo. Often you have too much. Finding dropped items in the game isn't a relief like it was in the previous ones. Instead, it's a pain from the beginning, as you'll basically always need to drop something just to pick something else up. At least they got weapons right. You can carry all of them at once, which is really good for a multiplayer-focused game like this. The struggle of holding so many freaking grenades, though, it sucks. And the health items, why do I have to manage these? Just like in the other games, you can mix herbs that you find. So sometimes you're holding on to a crappy single-use health item because you might later be able to convert it into a 6-use health item. But you can also take the herbs you have and convert them into the snack that smiles back Tic Tacs and store them in this little thing. Pop a few out when you want them and then that's it. This clears out your inventory space of health items, but only until you find more. Half the time you're just waiting to complete an herb mixture so that you can put your Tic Tacs away. It's a mess. I mean, the fact that the game now has a dedicated command for automatically having a system mix and manage all of your herbs shows how much its new focus is wrestling with the old and outdated norms of the series it's trying to preserve for no reason. Another thing is the difficulty. Okay, before y'all pull a Hamish Black sucks a Splatoon mutiny on me, hear me out. Resident Evil traditionally had really cool difficulty systems. In older games, harder modes meant actually playing as different characters going through modified sequences with all sorts of changes. In Resident Evil 1, playing hard mode made you play as Chris. It changed the enemy locations and even reduced your inventory size. A harder mode means you can carry less things. That's really smart. Resident Evil 4 didn't do this. Instead, it had a dynamic difficulty system, which was really cool, but Resident Evil 5 onwards went down your typical road of harder modes, just giving your enemies harder defenses and stronger attack. Basically, they do more damage to you, and you do less damage to them. Resident Evil 6 does this, but like, really, really poorly. A lot of enemies in the game have really cheap moves that are barely telegraphed or predictable. Tie that to the fact that often you'll be fighting hordes coming in from all different directions, and half of them always out of sight. Most of the time it's super dark and you have no idea what's happening, and you're constantly taking hits that you just could not anticipate. The game's health items are distributed very sparingly also, meaning that despite how much ammo you always seem to have, you never have enough Tic Tacs to last you long. You often need to rely on your partner to resuscitate you every time you go down. In single player it's fine because the partner can't die and you can heal yourself immediately after. But in multiplayer you have the option to revive and heal your partner at the same time, and since the game doesn't seem to give you much more health when you're two people, it means you're constantly struggling to make the same supply of medicine you had for one player mode last for two player mode. It's just like those old arcade games where enemies would show up with unpredictable behavior and the only way to win was through memorization and quarters. The difference here is that the game gives you checkpoints and wants you to progress. It doesn't eat your quarters, it doesn't reset you every time you die. So what happens sometimes on the normal difficulties is that you get into these slumps of having basically no health and no means of doing anything about it but having tons of enemies ahead who still want a piece of you. If you want my advice, play on the normal difficulty. It's definitely not that easy, but it's mostly fair. If you find yourself dying too much, especially if you're playing it solo, you can always drop a level whenever you want. Playing with a friend, normal will work if you're both committed and experienced. But if you really just want to have a good time with a buddy, easy mode isn't a complete cakewalk. You'll still be taking hits you can't anticipate and running out of health. Just at least when you take one of those hits, you won't lose half your health right away because enemies do so much damage. It also is enough to prepare you for the Mercenaries mode. It's not like you'll be a crap player for doing the game on easy. Resident Evil 6 also chooses to carry over a couple of puzzle sort of concepts from the previous games. Again, glad they got the AI participating in solo, but for the most part, they're bad. The only really good ones are those that don't have both players doing the exact same thing separated by a wall, but instead have the characters completely isolated from one another, working out their own solutions to independent puzzles and influencing the other player's progression. And other than those, there are only two other issues I have with the game that really kind of come from itself, not from the series it's a part of. And I don't even know if it's worth bringing them up, but I will. So like, the game has a lot of cool action set pieces that require quick timing on the parts of both players. Problem is that some of them aren't really optimized for online play, especially when your partner has crappy internet and the game has been out for 4 or 5 years. The chase sequences were really bad. The car like stutters all over the place when you're not the one driving. And if you came for the stream, you know that a significant amount of it became us just trying to get past this one section where you're running up this thing and this jelly skeleton monster is chasing you. For some reason, the game took too long to sync our actions together, so our characters would just sit there unresponsive even after we both pressed the assisted jump that both players have to do together. And then of course the monster would break the platform beneath us and kill us, even though we had pressed the button. Our characters were just not doing anything. To finally complete it, we ended up figuring out that purposely delaying our jumps somehow made it sync up faster, so we had to wait before issuing our commands. It was really weird, but I can say from experience that I didn't have this problem before. So, truth be told, it could have just been a combination of my partner's internet connection issues, which plagued a lot of the stream, or just winding down of network support for the game. I mean, it has been 4 or 5 years. Got you.
Come on.
Do it! Jump! Okay,
Right.
that was fast, that was really fast. That was really fast for us. Okay, he's gonna slam me down. Oh my god! Oh! Yes! Yes! Oh my god! Freaking ball! Ah! Oh my god! Okay, this is the part where we gotta shoot him. Just bomb the... Okay, run! Okay, there's gonna be a part where we gotta slide under a thing, I think. Oh my god. Okay, yeah, right here there's gonna be a thing. We gotta slide. And then jump up this. And then jump over this. And then jump over this. Oh my god. And then jump over this. Oh my god! We're gonna freaking do this! And then this is gonna be the part where I gotta jump you, and then it doesn't matter what happens because the guy's gonna drop the thing on me or whatever. Yeah, right here, right here, right here, right here. Perfect. Got you. Jump! Jump! Oh my god, jump! Okay, come on, sneak. This is ridiculous. No! What? What? Secondly, and this is kind of a bigger one, but the game is really bad at giving you directions. There's a UI-related word I've used a couple of times, affordance. And this game has almost none. Affordance is how an interface directs a user on how to use it through its design alone. The classic example is that of a button. If you've never seen a button before, how do you know how to use it? Do you push it? Do you twist it? Well, the fact that it's raised makes you intuitively understand that you interact with it by pushing it in. In games, affordance is important if you're trying to preserve a state of flow. You can program people's minds to automatically respond to certain environmental cues that keep them going the way you want them to. If you haven't already, check out Mark Brown's video, Why Nathan Drake Doesn't Need a Compass, where he explains how Naughty Dog uses composition to indicate to a player how to interact with their environment as a way of guiding them without waypoints. Games like Uncharted and Assassin's Creed use the color of game objects to indicate how they're used and what they'll do. In Resident Evil 4, I would argue that doors served this purpose. No entrance or exit to any room in the game looks the same. You can tell when you're facing a direction if you're retreading old ground or progressing forwards. Every environment kind of looks different depending on which angle you're coming at it from. You can tell that, oh, I've already been through this door, this is the direction I'm going. You always know where to go because there's always a path that takes you there. There's always a door at the other side. Every room in Resident Evil 4 is a room. You enter from one point and you exit from another point. Resident Evil 5 is mostly the same. The pathways in the environment naturally guide you to your destination. Environments are unique enough for you to know, without needing to peek at a map, where you're going. In fact, Resident Evil 5 was so good at this that instead of having a dedicated button to show a player where their objective is, it instead had one that locked the camera on the position of your partner, as that was more important information to give a player access to. In this game, I don't know what it is, but you're constantly losing your coordinates and forgetting where you are. The environments, as detailed as they are often very cryptic about which paths are valid and which aren't. Elements repeat themselves a lot. Many rooms look the same. Many roofs look the same. To guide players, a dedicated button exists that when you press it pulls up a phone that points to a waypoint. Once you reach that point in 3D space, the game will load the next one for you to follow. Once you discover this, you start relying on it all the time, even in situations where the game might actually be guiding you properly. I mean, when it comes to navigating the environments in Resident Evil 6, no matter how many options they might possibly give you for this, pulling up a waypoint by pressing a button is a dominant strategy. It's just really crappy that the game had to be littered with so many beacons so that players wouldn't get lost. I mean, there's this one section in Leon's thing where you need to find 3 keys for a door, and the guidance beacon just waits for you there until you have all the keys. Getting to the keys without being able to rely on your ability to just press a button and know where to go is a huge pain in the butt, and you'll be running around in circles for a while before you realize it. Chris's also has a moment like this in a tanker ship, which is just as bad. You're navigating this maze-like environment, and it takes way too long to discover new paths, especially because everything looks the same. Resident Evil 4 included a scene very similar to this in Salazar's garden, but gave the player so many cues as to where to go without, having a map on screen, without pulling up a phone. Each corner of the maze looked unique. There were natural landmarks like fountains you could use to direct yourself. There were torches that you could decide to extinguish to mark places you'd already been. There were chests that you could leave open to show that you'd been there. There were enemy mutant dogs hiding and growling in bushes of corners you hadn't yet visited. The game basically afforded you the solution to the maze without you realizing it. It was easy to tell when you were somewhere new, when you were somewhere you hadn't been yet. And it was also easy to tell when you were somewhere that you had been before. You'd walk up to, say, a branching path, and there was always some sort of hint to tell you which way to go. It's disappointing that Resident Evil 6 couldn't do better at this, though, to be fair, most action games I've played have relied on camera positioning for direction, and most FPS games have radars and waypoints. So Maybe the game's true flaw was structuring itself along a linear path. I don't know. But other than having to consult a lightsaber from time to time and channel the Force to know where you have to go, the game executes most of what it's trying to do flawlessly. It's a really, really good action game. Where it doesn't fail its series is in its environments, which all seem to pay homage to familiar locations from the previous games, adapted of course for this new genre. The game is full of throwbacks to moments from the old Resident Evil games that you remember, like Leon running away from a giant fish swimming. It's like the same swimming animation almost, with the fish coming up and everything. Things like taking over a giant tanker ship as Chris, just like you did in Resident Evil 5. You've got whole sections in the Leon campaign, like the graveyard place, that look like they're ripped straight out of Resident Evil 4. But more than anything, the game is like a love letter to Resident Evil 2, referencing so many different things, trying to recreate moments from that game. Resident Evil 6 tries its best to redefine its series in the time it was made, and I think it did great. It was exactly the sort of game people wanted then. The problem is that the people who bought it weren't the people who wanted it. It had, before its release, an established audience of people who misunderstood it and would reject it. Give this to a kid who'd play Resident Evil 4, they'd be disappointed. Give it to a dude who played Call of Duty though, and they'd be pleasantly surprised. Games, hello, are socio-technical systems. And so when they fail, you can't just look at their technical characteristics. You also must consider their social aspects. Resident Evil 6 did not fail for any functional reasons having to do with itself. If a game exactly like Resident Evil 6 had been released under a different name and brand, it would have been a success. If Resident Evil 6 were a spin-off third-person version of Call of Duty Zombies, it would have been a success. RE6 failed instead for social reasons. Resident Evil 6 is a downright awesome, inspiring, polished, and complete game. And it failed due to social impacts that it tried to mitigate from day one, from its initial reveal. And hopefully by this point, you agree with me that it didn't deserve this.
Resident Evil 6 is a really good pizza, one of the best I think I've ever had. Of course, if you're going in expecting a car, you're going to be disappointed. It's not that the game's bad, it's just that you're going to be disappointed. After all, this is not going to work. You can't drive a pizza, but you can eat pizza. I'm just going. I didn't even get napkins! Oh, geez.
You have the worst ideas.
R.I.P. Well, see, what I was thinking was like, here's what I'm thinking. A little bit of that.
It's not. No, it's not gonna work, I'm telling you. I don't think it's gonna work, gotta tell you.
Hello and welcome to the end screen! If you couldn't tell, I have a little bit of a cold. I only started realizing this halfway through recording. I had a sore throat this morning, then I come here to record my nose like, and I'm having a good time. And it's also like past 9 o'clock, and I want to go home because I don't live here. This house is empty right now, and I want to go. I need to get back downtown, which is going to take a long time, so I'm going to cut this quick. So first of all, there may have either been a live action bit or not. If there was a live action bit, I believe the fellow I was going to film it with, his name is Bobby Broccoli. You probably know him if you're into the SpongeBob gaming YouTube scene, which I wish I was not a part of, and I've tried very hard to not be a part of it. I'm officially not a part of it anymore, so that was the news. I got it right now in my ear. They just told me, Dennis, you're not a part of it. I was like, so yeah, Bobby's spending some time over in my neck of the woods, and we've been chilling a little bit, having a good, you know what I mean? So yeah, thank you to him. You know him. Also again, thank you to CoolPants McMahon for chilling out and playing that game. Very importantly, I want to announce something though. So I didn't record any footage of the Jake and Sherry campaign. Also, what the heck? Why was Sherry not Ashley? I remember when they announced the game and they were like, and they played that character's voice, and I was like, is that Ashley? Because like the whole game is fan service. The whole like from the environments to the scenarios you're going through, it's just fan service in the video game, right? It's like it's almost like an All-Stars Resident Evil sort of game, right? It's just like, it's crazy. And when they pulled out that character, I was like, who remembers Sherry? Like, you've got to be like an old school Resident Evil fan to remember Sherry. But if you're an old school Resident Evil fan, they already got Leon for you and they got Chris for you, right? Chris was in the first game, so you're already covered, right? So why would they bring in like Sherry? I thought it would be cool if like it turned out that Ashley was now this like super duper super soldier sort of, I don't know what, because they already have you on a campaign where you're playing with this dude named Jake, right? Who's like Albert Wesker's son, and it's like this stupid, it makes no sense, but whatever. And then they throw you with Sherry Birkin, which you're supposed to know is the daughter of this scientist god guy. Anyways, it was just, you know what, my biggest problem, I should have said this, my biggest problem with that game is that they didn't make Ashley the character in the third campaign. I thought that would have, like, I thought it was Ashley for the longest time. I was like, did she like change her name to, like, I didn't know who the heck Sherry Birkin was. Anyways, they tied too much, they relied too much on Resident Evil 4. They should have, on Resident Evil 2 rather. They should have given us a little bit of something to do with Resident Evil 4. I realized it would be kind of like dumb if like Sheva came back in her own campaign. I mean, it would be cool, but you know, obviously not many people would like that because Sheva just brings a lot of crap with her because a lot of people don't like her, or don't like the AI that controlled her on your first playthrough because they force you to play as Chris. But anyways, I didn't play through the Jake and Sherry campaign, so here's my plan. In the coming days or weeks, you never know, here's my plan. I'd like to do a little bit of a YouTube streamerino, if you know what I mean, on my second channel, RamHoot. Well, formerly RamHoot, now it's called LambHoot RH, because when I replied to people in comments as RamHoot, people didn't realize that it was me, so now it's very clearly me responding to comments. Good times. But yeah, over on that channel is where I do streams and goofy crap from time to time. Sometimes I just upload like 50 videos in a day and everybody just gets mad at me for like destroying their sub boxes, and it's good. It's good stuff. But yeah, so that's where I do streams, and in the coming days, I think I'm going to try to organize some sort of Resident Evil 6 Jake and Sherry campaign stream. I might do this a combination of different ways. It might either be split screen with someone I will invite over to do that with, or I'll try to organize it online with someone. So if you're interested in this game, in playing this game with me, let me know. And you have a PlayStation 3 with a connection to the internet that is not CoolPants McMahon's, because his was trash. And also, CoolPants, I'm not asking you to this because we did this already, and we had a really good time. We became really good friends over that, so that's why I'd rather do it with someone else. If that's okay, please don't be offended. I still love you. Don't worry, we're best buds. So yeah, if anyone's down, let me know. Otherwise, I'll figure it out. I might maybe I'll try to do it over a weekend or something. We'll see. Who knows? But anyway, stay tuned for that. If there are any announcements, I'll either do it. It'll just either happen on LambHoot, RamHoot RH, or it will happen on, or I'll like announce it on. I'll definitely announce it on Twitter, Discord, and all the rest of it. I don't know what video I want to do. Oh yeah, I wanted to do Pikmin 2 after this. I don't know if I want to anymore though, because I had another idea today. Well, not another idea today, but I had an idea like 3 years ago. And I tried to do it 3 years ago, and it never worked out. I have a bunch of footage from it, and I used it very recently, actually. But I never went through with the full idea because it just was really bad. But I think I've reworked it in my head today, and I think I got it. So maybe I'll work on that instead of Pikmin. I don't know. Do you guys care about Pikmin still? Because Pikmin 2 is like one of my favorite games ever. The problem is that it's really long and it's really hard to get into. Like once you start it, it's like, oh, it's like a drag. But once you get into it, you're like, yes. But then, like, once you stop it, you're like, I don't want to get into it again. It's too complicated. So whatever, we'll see. You know what? Whatever I do next, I do next. I wanted to make a school video. Probably never going to do that. I don't think I have any other important things to say other than thank you guys for sticking around, having a good time with me for tonight. This is a pretty short end screen, actually. I think I'm going to get going. So, I didn't write any end screen points for myself. Oh, actually, there is one pseudo-important thing that I do want to bring up, and this is real serious talk. So, in order to do it, I'm going to hold this shield that I made, this SpongeBob shield, so that you take me extremely seriously, and I'm also going to put this shield in my shirt, so you take me as seriously as possible, okay? So, like I mentioned, I have moved. Problem is, I can't record where I am currently. It's a really good place. It is temporary, obviously always looking for something better, but it was just a really, really good deal for the time, very close to where I work, so it was like, gotta do it. Problem is that the walls aren't soundproof, so obviously if I make a lot of, like, if I'm talking at this level, people close by, maybe in the hallway, could hear me or something. Also, just making too much noise kind of crap. I can pick up their noise. There's also a couple of appliances that I don't really have control over. So I have a refrigerator that I can't really move. Normally when I record, I unplug my refrigerator and I turn off the air conditioning. The air conditioning I do have control over, but like in my area, my room basically. But the building itself has its own heating and air conditioning system, which I can't control, which kind of also turns on from time to time. I also have a water heater, which just is the noisiest thing on earth. And it's just not the sort of stuff I can noise cancel. If you check the second channel, actually, there is like one video. I did an update video on that channel recently, and you can see the tone of voice that I'm using is very different than the sort of yelling I'm doing here, right? And as a side note, I think I've gotten to the point where it's kind of hard sometimes to respond to every comment individually like I used to. And the thing is, nowadays, it seems like all the comments are very, very similar. So what I've been doing is, instead of responding to comments, I've been making follow-up videos. I think at one point I used to do this back in the day. I called them after vids. Now I kind of want to call them like after the end screen or something like that. I don't have a name for them yet. I'm just saying like follow-up video or whatever. So I've been doing a couple of follow-up videos where I basically like go through all the comments. I notice a bunch of very similar problems people are having. So I did this with the Gen X video because there were some problems. I'm not going to address them here, but if you're interested, you can go watch that follow-up video. And I addressed some of the issues. Like there were some problems with that video. There were some problems I didn't think people would have, and I explained my rationale behind them, and I think people were appreciative of that. But yeah, anyways, if you're interested, go check that out. Yeah, so I can't really record where I'm currently at, and this home I am in right now is very likely not going to be accessible. It's basically, the idea is that it's going to be sold soon. So this may or may not be the. I mean, maybe it'll be a year before this is gone. I'd rather not have to come back here to record. It's just kind of a pain because I have to make sure that nobody's going to be home at the night that I record. Like, it's 9 o'clock right now, and I was lucky because nobody was home. But if I call one day and I say, hey, is anybody going to be home? And they're like, yeah, then it's like, oh crap. Now a video is set back by another week because I can only record on weekends. I can't come here on a weekday, record, and then get back home because it's just, I work the next day. So one of the solutions I was looking into was renting a studio space. There are a couple of options available to me. I haven't fully explored all of them yet, but the cheapest one I was able to find, they reported that it charges like 18 bucks an hour on their website. And that's just for a soundproofed room. Some of them are really stupid, like they give you, it's like music recording. Like it's hard to just find like a booth, like a room with walls and soundproof. That's all I need. That's all I need. I mean, you guys know me. My audio quality is terrible. I don't give a crap about it. Look, if you're coming here, you're not coming here for beautiful sound. You're coming. Maybe my voice, I'll do a little bit of an accent, make you have a little bit of a good time, make your ears like warm, yummy, 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 tasty. But if you're coming here, I hope you're coming here for the content, not my audio quality, because pretty trash. And I as a hobbyist, I will put the minimal amount of effort I have to into my audio. I put the maximum amount of effort I can into editing and content and everything. But like, if I sound like I'm a little bit echoey because I'm yelling and screaming, well, c'est la vie. So, anyways, so this is the situation I'm in. I like doing this as a hobby. I like doing this as a hobby a lot. What I don't like is when it starts costing me too much money. Things like buying games, I can rationalize that because sometimes I need to buy a game. So far though, most games I've done for these videos, I've owned already, with the exception of the 3 SpongeBob games. Those I purchased specifically for them. And Battalion Wars 2 actually. But that, I also just personally wanted to play that game, right? So what I always told myself was that I would never go seeking out any sort of fun. Like, I would self-fund everything I do because it's a hobby. I would do that with any sort of hobby. But when I'm at a situation where it's like I can't record any audio, then it gets a little bit funky. And there's all sorts of services like this these days. You probably support a couple of people on Patreon. I'm a patron for literally exactly one person. I don't want to like straight up like you should, because then it looks like I'm like an investor in this dude. I love this guy. I hope he's watching. I love you. But yeah, he's a cool dude. I mean, that's a cool service for people who need help producing this stuff, because it's a different situation when you're just able to just like, hey, I'm gonna make a video today, versus like, I need to spend this many dollars on it. Because like today, I started recording at 6 o'clock. It's now 9:15. 6 o'clock to 9:15. I've been recording myself talk about Resident Evil 6. That's a lot of money. So here's the deal. I don't think I ever want to do a Patreon sort of deal because it's a hobby. That's stupid to like, hey, look at me. Give me a paycheck. Give me like $2 a month to make videos. I don't need it. I make enough money. Don't worry. I live in a very nice place. I make enough money. I don't need to ask anybody for money. It is sucky that it's going to start costing me money, but yeah. And I don't feel right just straight up telling anybody like, please commit resources to me so that I can continue doing something that truthfully I would do at the same level as I'm currently doing now were it not for you committing a certain dollar amount of money per month. I promise you, if you gave me money, it would make me feel good. I'd be able to pay for a studio, $18 an hour to record, but it wouldn't change anything I'm doing. I'll do it anyways, you know, if I have to. But this is why, this is a new initiative I'm starting. This is why. So it's not like, people have asked me this before. Do you have a Patreon? I want to support you. And I've straight up told people like, no. And it's like, okay, can I buy you a game? And it's like, no, I don't need a game. I don't need anything. Don't worry, I'm good. But here's something I really, really like. And it's more of like a personal thing. Cause like it makes me feel really, really good knowing that like people care about this stuff. I sell shirts, right? Like they actually sell pretty decently for someone of my following, which is really impressive. And look, if you feel like you want to support me in any way, I don't really want to accept support, but if you still do, you can buy a shirt. And this is the thing about my shirts is that I mostly make them for myself. I own almost all of the shirts I've designed, and I just like making the shirt. I like just making a design, putting it on a shirt, looking at it on the model and being like, that's a good shirt. And I want to do something. I thought of this a while ago and I've tried to commit to it. So every video I want to make a shirt based off that video. Some joke from the video, something from the thumbnail, something. I want to make a shirt, I want to make a design for every video, and then probably get one myself. But I want to like really commit myself to this because I have so much fun making these thumbnails, and I have so much, I never mentioned this, but when I make a thumbnail, I only give myself the time that it takes for the video to upload for myself to make the thumbnail. So I start uploading the video and then I start making a thumbnail, and once it's done, the thumbnail goes out, that's it. And I just love doing these like stupid looking thumbnails, stupid looking shirts. And it's just really cool because it's like, that means more to me than like, if you were like, I want to support you, here's like $2 a month, here's, you know, this many dollars a video, I'd be like, oh wow, thanks, and I would honestly, honest to God, I would forget about it, right? But if you go out of your, if I get an email saying somebody ordered a shirt from you, right, and then I get like a tweet a couple of weeks later once it's delivered, it's like someone wearing the shirt like, hey, check it out, I'm wearing your stupid Mexican JonTron shirt, right? That's, I mean, number one, you're funding me slightly, but also it's motivation, because in this sort of hobby, the crucial thing, the key thing you need the most is motivation. And it's really easy to lose motivation, especially because most of the time people around you in your personal life don't really understand what you're doing, so they're not able to motivate you. You need people to tell you like, hey, you're doing a good job. And when you see somebody wearing a shirt, honest to God, there's nothing more motivating than that. It's amazing. When you see people making images of you, it's amazing. It's just pure motivation. So as we continue here and as this hobby gets more and more complicated and I have to start paying for things, if ever you're interested in supporting this financially in any way, forget about it. I want you to wear some good threads if you're gonna do that, okay? Let me get you some nice clothes, okay? You gotta do it. I'll make you some nice stuff. Spreadshirt actually took down one of my shirt designs. I should have known. It was a picture of me as a kid wearing a SpongeBob costume, much like this, and it says underneath, have you seen this kid? Because the joke was in the thumbnail. I wrote, this kid explains video game, blah, blah, blah. Stupid. But yeah, they took down the shirt and they didn't even tell me. They just took it down even before I could buy one. I was coming home and I was like, from work, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy my shirt tonight. And then I go, gone. But yeah, so information on my website. I have on LambHoot.com/swag. There are links to the two shirt providers that I sell shirts on, Redbubble and Spreadshirt. I have them on both because here's the deal. Spreadshirt is way cheaper, but the quality is almost as good as Redbubble. I'm not gonna lie, it's worse. The printing is not as good. You get less colors. Redbubble's printing is like, it's like exactly the picture you have, but it's mostly unnoticeable. I have two LambHoot logo shirts, one from Redbubble and one from Spreadshirt. They're both really, really nice. The Spreadshirt one is a little bit grayer, like it got less color, like you can see it's pasteurized a little bit, and the Redbubble one's really colored, but like you can't tell unless you're looking like right at the design, right? The only thing is that Spreadshirt doesn't really do sales, and Redbubble almost like, if you subscribe to their emails, like half the time it's like, we are 20% off, like around Christmas sometimes it's like 50% off all shirts, and it's like, oh, here we go, you know? So that's really the only reason I have it on both, otherwise it'd be all in Spreadshirt. But Redbubble does have some, like it's not just shirts, you get it on a pillow, you get it on a, like I said, the quilt, you get it on a bed sheet, which someday when I have enough thumbnails, I'm gonna get the bed sheet of all my thumbnails. It's gonna be amazing. But yeah, you get a sweater, whatever. I want to get a sweater with this kid, but it's a little bit too late for that. But anyways, yeah, that shirts. I got some. If you want them, you can get them. It's not a car. I'm telling you, it's a pizza, so you know what you're going into if you decide to. But that's it. Anyways, I hope you're all having a lovely day. been here for like half an hour recording this end screen. So I'm gonna take this off. And now I'm gonna okay. And I'm gonna pack up the We Fit trilogy and this acorn. I'm gonna take it out. That's not an acorn, but and this balance board. This is my tombstone because I'm gonna go bury myself. Goodbye.